Let me go to immigration. You made a decision to delay any executive action until after the election. What do you tell the person that's going to get deported before the election that this decision was essentially made in your hopes of saving a Democratic Senate?
Well, that's not the reason. A couple of things that I want to say about immigration. Number one, I have been consistent about why this is important.
All right, folks, that's Chuck Todd, the host of Meet the Press, interviewing the President of the United States. And now I get to interview the host of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, who is the moderator, as I mentioned, of Meet the Press and political director of NBC News and White House correspondent and the author of The Stranger, Barack Obama in the White House. There it is up on your great screen.
Former White House correspondent.
Former White House correspondent. You can't do everything.
Can't do all
right,
of
I'm
those
sorry.
jobs.
I take
No,
that
no,
back.
no.
Well, welcome, Chuck.
Nice
Great
to
to
have a
see you.
former in there.
And you know, everything I say to you is with all great respect, because I think a man in your position deserves that. And Meet the Press, you know, it's must-watch viewing for people like me. Yeah,
right.
yeah, and hopefully for a lot more people. The Stranger. To me, it's a great title, and it speaks to who Barack Obama is as he, you know, lives in the White House. But why that title in your mind?
I think it's because it does feel as if, particularly, look, I wrote this from the prism of Washington. I'm going to pretend it's anything other than that. In fact, I think some of the criticism of the book that have come from people, particularly on the left, is that it's been too Washington-centric. Well, that's what A, I do, and B, that is how we're judging him. How is he managing Washington at this point? And I think that is the most familiar refrain, is how many people feel as if 6 years in, they still don't know him, they still don't quite know what makes him tick. I had one Democratic senator who was a big supporter of him in the primary against Hillary Clinton say, I backed the wrong horse. I didn't realize he hadn't climbed the greasy pole of politics.
Want to name that senator?
Not at all.
Okay. Well, and it's not just, you know, it's the Democrats too, and
right,
as
this
you
was
just
a
said,
Democratic
yes,
senator,
yes, who don't know him, who don't have relationships with
They
him.
don't have relationships. I mean, I think they do think they know him, and I think he thinks that he knows them and how they tick. I think the issue is he's not a big practitioner of inside politics, inside game. You know, he doesn't, if you want to talk about it in basketball terms, he's all outside shot.
Right.
He doesn't like to elbow on the inside when you need to.
And that's okay if things are working, and that's okay if the world isn't falling apart at home and abroad.
Sometimes it takes some elbow grease, some insider game.
So what doesn't he understand about that? Why the unwillingness, even now in the aftermath of the midterm debacle, from his point of view, a debacle, the unwillingness to move to the center, to compromise? Instead, he's doubling down.
I think it's, well, on this election, I think he's frustrated. I think he looks back and says, Democrats ran away from him. A lot of good that did. Look at the immigration example. That's the irony. They delayed it only for politics. Well, and then his answer to me was, no, it wasn't just about Senate politics. He said it was also about the politics of the issue change over the summer with the influx of undocumented children. Well, if that's the case, if politics mattered then in September, boy, then how does the midterms and the way immigration was debated not matter now? So I think he has put himself in a box, but in this respect, he's mad about it because he never wanted to delay. And that's why you wonder why he's doubling down. He believes that had Democrats backed up his record more, they wouldn't have done any worse, and maybe he thinks they would have done better.
Is he the most stubborn president that you can remember?
No.
I mean, look at
I
the
don't
government
know.
shutdown.
I mean, I can't sit there and say that.
No, but has there ever been a president, when it came to a debt ceiling and a budget crisis, that said, I will not negotiate? Shut the government down if you want.
Well, and I think he looks at it and says, John Boehner didn't negotiate in good faith. So I do think there's two sides to that story on that front. I think the problem with the way I certainly view the way I view the presidency is I think presidents are stuck whether they like it or not, that no matter how many times their hand gets slapped away, if they believe it's getting slapped away, they got to keep trying. And he set himself up as saying, hey, I'm the adult in the room. Well, if you're going to be the adult in the room, you always have to be the adult in the room.
But does he set himself up also to say, I'm the smartest person in the room, no matter what the circumstance, no matter what the room?
That's been the feeling I think some people get, and that's why I think that there's certainly a personality clash a little bit.
And is that a wide felt feeling around Washington?
I don't know if it's wide. I think there's certainly people that have problems with him will bring that up to me.
Yeah, all right. And do you see him, well, how do you see the next 2 years with him, though? Anything getting done, or besides executive order?
Look, I feel like the immigration and healthcare issues are so toxic right now, the way both parties feel about them, that I don't know how both parties set them aside and get the other stuff done, go and tackle tax reform. So I don't. You know, if I were President Obama, I would take this immigration. You feel as if you always want to get, I used the phrase, get caught trying. I'm surprised he's not saying, okay, here's everything I'm going to do with executive action, but I'm going to do it on June 1st, 2015.
Right, give them some time.
All right, guys, you wanted one more shot? I'll
Here
give
it
you
is.
one more shot.
Chuck Todd's coming back. Don't go away. All right, folks, we're back with Chuck Todd, the host of Meet the Press and the author of a brand new one, The Stranger, Barack Obama in the White House. The relationship between Barack Obama and Benjamin Netanyahu. Did Obama come in? I mean, Jesse Jackson said before the election in 2008 that if Obama wins, it's going to be a whole new landscape in the Middle East. Israel will not have the influence it once had. Does Obama dislike Israel? Does Obama have it ingrained in him from his acquaintances, his experiences, to be against Israel?
No. I think that's not the case at all. I think there is just I would look at it in terms of Obama's from Mars and Netanyahu's from Venus. It's more of because the relationship between the countries is better than it is between the two men. I mean, if you were talking about that Israel didn't have influence, and if you thought that was the case with the president, then you wouldn't have the military-to-military relationship that has gotten tighter, if anything. Look at Iron Dome. So, no, I really think this is about a lack of chemistry between two men, Barack Obama, Bibi Netanyahu.
Jonathan Turley has decided to represent the House in their lawsuit against the president. What does that do to those on the left who might have thought that this was all frivolous nonsense and a waste of time?
Well, they still have to find their rationale. You know, they haven't decided how they're going to do this lawsuit. I do think that has hurt the credibility of this lawsuit because...
But they haven't filed it yet.
A, they haven't filed it,
Right.
and B, they haven't said what they're going to file it on.
Right. Well, I think it's going to be healthcare and immigration.
But see, that's the point. If he is say what it is.
Yeah, well, they will eventually.
That
So
it's
what
not obvious. No, my point is, I hear you, and I think Turley gives credit. I'm not saying it doesn't give it credibility. I think what has hurt the initial credibility is say, we're going to sue the president.
Right.
On what?
Right.
Well, we're figuring that out.
No, I'd like to know too. Absolutely.
Right,
but Turley, who says he voted for Obama
Right.
twice, but who's really blasted him.
He's been a big critic, particularly on the
constitutionality,
particularly the NSA stuff.
Yeah.
With Snowden.
So you think this helps the credibility?
It could help the credibility, but again, they have to figure out what they're suing him on.
Yeah. No,
I think it's sort of it is a weird. We're going to sue him.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, what?
Bias in the media.
Yes, sir.
Is there bias in the media on the left?
I think there is cultural bias, is what I always talk about. I think the bias stems from the fact that the news media is headquartered in New York City. And I've always thought the cultural bias on issues like religion, in particular a lot of social issues, where there is this feeling, middle America feels as if New York sort of imposes more its cultural values. I think that is what has created the perception that therefore all media leans left. I think culturally it's there. I don't think it's as pervasive as some believe it's on the right, but I think the cultural stuff is what makes it a credible
attack. Why did
it
take 9 days once the Gruber video came out? You talked about it on Meet the Press just the other day, but the networks, 9 days before they talked about it. And now it's a huge story.
I'm not saying it's not a story. Look, I'm not in charge of any of those network newscasts, but what is the news today of that? It's a political story. Network news in general hasn't been covering the political back and forth of Washington a lot lately. I don't think this has to do with Gruber specifically. I would just caution people on that.
When Alma Adams, running for Congress, was on stage and called Tillis and Uncle Tom, when the guy running against Nikki Haley said, take the whore out the door, if that had been a Republican, if either one of those had been Republicans, what would the difference in the coverage have been, do you believe?
I don't, I can't say that. I don't know for sure.
How would you have covered it differently?
I don't know for sure. If they're not well-known figures, I don't think I would have covered it in either direction. I didn't cover either of those stories because I don't think I would have covered it the other way. It's not, look, I think surrogates, when they're not known people, are not stories. I think this sort of, we have allowed social media in some ways, clickbait and all this stuff. I think we have this sort of, we've allowed politics come up to have too much faux anger. Faux grievances.
Michael Brown's, I'm rushing because we don't have much time. Michael Brown's mom, a suspect in an armed robbery. Is anybody talking about that in the media? If it was George Zimmerman's mother, or at the same time and place, in proximity to the case, how do you explain that?
I am not making these decisions on Ferguson. I think everybody looks at.
But is that not a bias?
Well, first of all, how you cover a story is biased. How I cover a story, you know why? We're human beings. We're all born with original bias. So I think to scream that every story is ideological bias really is stale
Is Bush
to me.
vindicated at all with these findings that chemical weapons have injured scores of troops in Iraq?
The implication was mushroom clouds. I don't think so.
I don't understand. What do you mean he implied
The
that there'd be mushroom
implication
clouds?
between the implication
But we heard there were
of
no weapons of mass
weapons of mass
destruction, but there were.
destruction was nuclear weapons. Come on.
So anything else other than
Nobody
nuclear?
is saying, but is it? I don't think you're asking if
They
it's totally,
found chemical weapons, is what I'm saying. That doesn't vindicate Bush
I
at all?
don't think it vindicates him.
No? Okay.
I
All
don't.
right. Fair enough. Thank you for
right,
coming.
my friend.
Thank you for being a good sport
You got it.
and answering the questions. I hope one day you'll come back.
I'm happy
All right.
to.
If before the paperback version.
Fair enough.
Okay, good
All
enough.
right.
Chuck Todd, ladies and gentlemen, moderator of Meet the Press, and I'm glad he was here. There it is, the stranger, Barack Obama in the White House. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Bret Stephens of the Wall Street Journal. Lots to talk about today with him and with others. Of course, the terrorist attack in Israel. We'll be covering that extensively, so don't go away. Right here on Newsmax Television.